All right, so it happens to everyone who sells on Etsy eventually. At a certain point, your shop hits a slump. Or maybe you've had very few sales to begin with. However, today we're talking about a long-term slump, not a seasonal slowdown like we might experience in January after the huge amount of sales that are possible during November and December. But in this video, you're going to discover why your listings on Etsy either aren't selling, have never sold, or perhaps what feels even worse is that your listing has stopped selling in its entirety. And yes, of course, there's tons of reasons as to why your item hasn't sold or has stopped selling, but I don't know about you, but I don't really care why it has stopped selling. I just want the strategies to get it selling again, and hopefully again and again. And when? As soon as possible, of course. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, but sales beget sales on Etsy. So the more sales you get, the more sales you get. Now, if you're happy with your Etsy sales or you're happy having a couple orders every few days, but if you truly want to scale what you're doing, this is what I'm doing in my Etsy shop, and this is what I've seen some of the really huge Etsy shops doing lately. When you add a new listing on Etsy, it's extremely beneficial if you are able to sell that listing or item right away. Now, I'm talking about a listing where you have more than one of the item and preferably, at least in theory, an unlimited number of the item. Not just one single gorgeous wooden ornate antique coffee table or a beautiful one-of-a-kind oil painting. No, I'm not talking about that kind of listing. I'm talking about the kind of listing where, in theory at least, you have an unlimited number of that item. And yes, you want to sell that item as close to immediately as possible. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, but as close to immediately as possible. Now, at this point, you're probably asking me why? Why does this work? Well, if you're able to sell the listing once, it immediately tells Etsy that there is value to this listing. And clearly, if one person likes it, then there are probably many others that do as well. If Etsy has made money off the listing once, then doesn't it stand to reason that perhaps it will again and again? Okay, so that's all fine and good, but I still can't get any sales. What if you have an older listing and perhaps it used to do well and now it's not? What if it even used to be a best-selling item and now it's not? Again, you want to think that the key to all of this is to get sales. So if the goal of my YouTube channel, according to YouTube, is for me to get clicks, get people to watch for as long as possible, then YouTube can show ads to viewers on my videos, as many as possible, so YouTube makes more money. Then the goal of an Etsy shop for Etsy is for Etsy to have as many sales as possible. And because then this gets me as many sales as possible. And why? Again, because sales beget sales on Etsy. So the more you start to repeat that phrase, the more your sales will take off. So how do you do it? Now, let's say you don't have an email list. I don't. Let's say you don't have any social media. I do, but I haven't posted on there in months, so we'll just consider it completely irrelevant. So what choices are you left with? Well, you could pin the item to Pinterest with any account that you have, just using the Google Chrome extension. You don't need to do anything special just to get it into Pinterest. But let's say you don't want to take the 2 seconds to do that either. Well, if you have been selling on Etsy for a long time, think back to what it was that made you first start to get sales on Etsy to begin with. What was it that made your items start to sell? If you are newer to Etsy and your items haven't sold yet, notice I said yet, but the answer is this, and I'll spell it out, and then I'll go through and explain everything in detail of how to solve these problems. Either the price is too high, the item isn't trending or popular anymore or never was, there's too much competition and the market is saturated, perhaps there's too much competition and the design is now copied, which means that, of course, your item isn't unique and it isn't special anymore. Or that there's no compelling reason for the customer to purchase from you anymore. Okay, that's it. Those are the only variables you have to operate with, right? You either have no customers because no one is looking for this item anymore, no one is searching for it, or now that there's more competition, the customers can be picky because there are other people selling it for less money, or perhaps the item in the other shop is perhaps cuter, more unique, or is just simply getting shown more because their keywords are better. There is no longer any compelling reason for anyone to purchase from you and your Etsy shop. So now you need to create that compelling reason. Either you can lower your price, you can advertise to more people, or you can make your listing or item more desirable, or you can move on to something entirely new. You have to decide which are you going to choose, or how are you going to make it more compelling and more desirable for your customer. Well, I've sold over $1 million in gross sales on Etsy, and I still can't control the competition. Now, maybe you can, but I can't. You can control your listings, your shop, and yes, you can control your customers. Now you might be asking yourself, oh wait, how am I supposed to control my customers? You do this with your photos, your design, and your prices. And ultimately how your customers react with their emotions. Here are all the hacks you need to know. You know how Etsy will show how many people have added an item to their shopping cart? Like this right here. You know how Etsy shows how many hours are left on a sale or discount you're running? You know how Etsy shows you reviews beneath your listings? You know how Etsy shows there's only 2 left of this item, buy now? You know how Etsy says set up a discount for customers that have favorited an item? Or set up a discount for abandoned carts? Run a sale, create a promo code? Or send previous customers a special discount code to get them to return to your shop? Well, this is how Etsy is trying, and in some cases desperately, it's trying to help you control your customer by controlling their psychology and their emotions. Psychology and emotions are what sell on Etsy and what sell anywhere. You're not just fulfilling a customer's need. No one needs another t-shirt. No one needs another mug. No one needs another apron. Customers want to give a gift to their aunt for Christmas. They want to purchase stickers for their organizer. They want to give their girlfriend a beautiful bracelet for their birthday. So how can you push your customers to think that they need this item and they need to purchase it right now? Can you create scarcity at the right price and on a timeline? So use the tools that Etsy gave you. Now, if you go to sell on another e-commerce platform, did you know that you don't get to use any of these types of tools for free? No, you have to pay extra. Not just a little bit extra like a fee on one item. You have to have an app for that. Not only an app that you have to spend time finding and figuring out if it's any good, but typically it's an app that's a monthly subscription app that you pay for whether you're selling any items or not. Now, if you want to get rich, maybe go and create those apps because a monthly subscription style business is clearly extremely lucrative. Just think of all the tools I just listed that you can go and set up in literally seconds on Etsy, in probably just a few seconds. So if you missed it, go back and watch it again. Even if you have never set up a code for your abandoned shopping carts on Etsy, do you know how long it will take you? I'm pretty sure it won't take you much more than a minute. 1 minute. Just 60 seconds of your time to potentially start to get more sales. And if you are getting favorites on Etsy and no sales, well, then you better go and set up a discount code for those who are favoriting your items so they can come back and purchase with a discount. Then the least you can say is, you know what? It didn't work. Do you know what to do if it didn't work? Well, you go in and create another offer until something starts to work. Stop telling yourself all of the huge list of reasons of why something is not going to work and start trying things. Start experimenting. Pretend that Etsy is a little science lab and you are the scientist. Take yourself and take your emotions out of it, because emotions don't work well in science and they don't work well in e-commerce. No one cares about you and your design. The customer only cares about what's in it for them. What's in it for them? What problem are you solving for them? Now, if you're doing and implementing all of these things and still nothing is selling, then you have to do the opposite of what we all do, which is sit and worry about it. You can't sit and stare at your computer screen and say, this isn't working and that isn't working. You have to continue to do something about it. So what can you do about it other than all the things we've already gone through? Can you change your listing photos? Maybe you just have one photo and then some size or dimension charts. Can you add more photos to tell more about the story of your shop or the shipping process, or show off some of the amazing reviews you've received? Maybe you can add a video. And of course, can you add new listings? Of course you can. Maybe you can delete some of the older listings that no one has purchased. And just if you were to sell a listing at an item price that is so low that you're basically giving it away and still no one purchases, then maybe it's not a good listing, or maybe it's not anymore. Are there changes you can make? Then go ahead and make them. Please don't tell yourself there's nothing you can do if you haven't done anything about it. What would you do if you had to get one single sale on your Etsy shop by tomorrow? What would you do? What would it take? What are the changes you'd have to make? I'm guessing you probably can think of at least a couple things. Now, as always, be careful not to break any laws, no trademark laws, no copyright laws. Just don't do these things because you want to get a quick sale. Don't do these things because if you get kicked off Etsy, you can't sell on Etsy again. And it's just not worth it when you can learn so much about selling, marketing, and ultimately customer behavior and psychology. Inevitably, there will always be competition. There will always be economic downturns. There will always be challenges. But what are you going to do about them? Etsy loves action, and I virtually guarantee you that if you start taking more action, then the more things have the possibility to grow and to blossom and to change. And if you want to get started with my favorite Etsy SEO search tool and help to support the channel, then check out the link down below in the description for Sales Samurai. And the reason it's my favorite is because you can literally just type in the search terms into the Etsy search bar itself, and it tells you the search volume and competition when you click on it. If you live in Canada and want to start to stay in hotels for free from the money you already spend on a credit card, then you can check that out below in the description as well. And as always, I continue to wish you all the very best of luck and success with your Etsy shop for today, tomorrow, and for well into the future. See you later, superstar.